Animals. Photo arc. The hunt for the world's rarest duck. The dogged search for a bird that many people figured had gone extinct included torrential rains, washed-out bridges, swine flu, and unrelenting obsession. Known by locals as Fatsameso, or white-eye, the Madagascar pochard is a diver. Like other diving ducks, and unlike dabbling ducks, their legs are farther back on their bodies, which helps propel them underwater and makes them appear more upright than dabblers when standing. They are the only ducks in their genus, Aethia, that live almost entire. Read more. Photograph by Joel Sartor, National Geographic Photo Arc, photographed at Durrell Wildlife Conservation Trust in Antananarivo, Madagascar. By Carol Huang. July 21, 2025. The Madagascar pochard, compared with other ducks, has little to crow about. It's a medium-size, rust-colored duck with neither the dramatic beak of a king-eider nor the brilliant plumage of a mandarin. Its primary physical distinction lies with the male, whose eyes turn white as the duck matures. But for a small group of scientists, it's an obsession. The duck is only found in Madagascar, a biodiversity hotspot. More than 85% of the country's plants and animals exist nowhere else. The island's oddities include baobab trees that resemble giant mushrooms, lemurs as small as a stick of butter, and a palm-sized creature called the lowland streaked tenrec, for which every day looks like a bad hair day. A century ago the Madagascar pochard was a common sight on Lake Alaotra, the country's largest lake, where sprawling wetlands once swarmed with chameleons, lemurs, fish, frogs, and fossas, slender, cat-like carnivores also only found in Madagascar. Over the decades, however, the lake's marshes and surrounding areas were converted to rice fields, forests were burned to make way for other crops, and the wetlands were transformed into agricultural heartlands. In 1960 a single flock of pochards was all that could be found on the lake. After that, the species seemed to vanish. In the 1980s Olivier Longrand, a French ornithologist, was researching a book on Madagascar's birds with his partner, biologist Lucien Wilm. Over a year-long search, they traversed the island in carts pulled by humpbacked cows called zebus, camped in the mud, and hiked in relentless rain. They identified over 100 bird species, not one of them a pochard. These flamboyant birds are the 17,000th species to enter Nat Geo's Photo Arkansas. In the late 80s, Longrand met Glyn Young, a zookeeper with the Durrell Wildlife Conservation Trust in the United Kingdom with a growing interest in waterfowl. Young recounts that Longrand offered to help him embark on his own expedition to find the duck. Olivier was particularly keen on the pochard because it was one of the very few birds he'd never seen in Madagascar, recalls Young. The pochard was one of Madagascar's rarest and most threatened bird species, and that, for a bird scientist, is not something to let disappear without a fight. He wanted somebody to spend significant amounts of time looking for it. Young happily obliged. For 7 weeks, Young and a colleague paddled across Lake Alaotra in dugout canoes and visited villages, where they were offered plenty of homemade rum but little information about the duck. We couldn't find any ducks, or any hope for them. Things didn't end there. Instead, for Young, that's how the obsession started. It would span 30 years, thousands of miles, and the birth of his first child, whom he named Aethia, after the duck's scientific name, Aethia inotata. Wilm also returned to the hunt. Conditions for the pochard's survival were bleak, she recalls. Fires smoldered as people cleared forests around the lake to plant rice fields. Fowlers strung nets across the water to catch waterbirds, 100 at a time, to sell in the markets to the country's quickly growing population. None held a pochard. Wilm, who was pregnant at the time, had to hire rowers to help her explore the lake. Africa. Madagascar. Cap d'Ambre. Madagascar. Pochard Range. MOZ. Former. Range. Antananarivo. Indian Ocean. 100 Mi. 100 km. Cape Saint Marie. Matthew W. Chwostek, NG Staff. Source: IUCN Red List. I spent many hours on the lake, in canoes, walking the marshes, working with local fishermen, she says. If you were a poacher, where would you go where you could be absent from threats and people? Such a place, it seemed to Wilm, didn't exist anymore. She printed pictures of the poacher on t-shirts and flyers, distributing them in villages and schools. The word was out. In 1991, Wilm's campaign yielded a surprise. A fowler caught a duck he'd never seen before and showed it to other duck hunters and fishermen in the area. None of them recognized it. But they did remember the public campaign and advised the fowler to bring it to Wilm. It was a male poacher. Wilm's account in the bulletin of the British Ornithologists' Club was hopeful. The finding of a single Madagascar poacher on Lake Alaotra indicates a remnant population may still exist. The discovery launched a year-long search of a wider area around Lake Alaotra in hopes of, yet the poacher might just be the world's most indomitable duck. In 2006, Lily Arison René de Roland, a raptor expert and national director of the Peregrine Fund's Madagascar program, and, as of 2023, a National Geographic explorer, hiked into a forest with a local guide and cook in a remote area of northern Madagascar to research its wildlife, with a special interest in an increasingly rare and vulnerable bird of prey called the Madagascar marsh harrier. Just 2 days into what he thought would be an expedition lasting several weeks, he spotted a small blue lake inside an extinct volcanic crater. When he lifted his binoculars, he spied something else, a flock of poachers. 9 adults and 4 ducklings. The harrier would have to wait. René de Roland snapped some photos and raced back to his team, who at first couldn't understand why they needed to urgently pack up and reverse course. I explained to them, the poacher is extinct. We need to confirm the photo to our boss in the US, he says. They traveled for 2 days back to a spot with internet connection to email his photos of the poachers to the Peregrine Fund's headquarters in Idaho. The photos were pinged across to the Atlantic to Young, who would quickly board a plane, once again, and this time with great hope, to Madagascar. 3 groups, the Peregrine Fund, the Durrell Wildlife Conservation Trust, and the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust, almost immediately began working with Madagascar's government to get the lake recognized as a protected site. The groups trained locals to work as field staff, monitoring the flock until a breeding program could be established. When a species is so incredibly rare that there is only one tiny, remnant population, it's easy to think they are living there because it's a good environment for them, and that's why they've survived, explains Young, who now chairs the Threatened Waterfowl Specialist Group at the International Union for Conservation of Nature. But the truth was simpler, and grimmer. They have nowhere else to go.